Welcome to Indonesia. Most people have heard of it. Most people could not tell you what it actually is. They know Bali, the island, the one island, out of 17,000. And from that one island, they think they understand a country that stretches 3,200 miles from one end to the other. Wider than the continental United States, with more languages than Europe, with more volcanoes than any country on Earth, with more ethnic groups and more ecosystems and more contradictions packed into one border than most people encounter in a lifetime. Indonesia is the country that the world mostly looks past, on the way to somewhere else. And what the world is looking past is one of the strangest, most extreme, most alive places on the planet. A country where ancient and modern do not take turns. They exist simultaneously, in the same province, sometimes in the same village. Where things happen that should not be possible in the 21st century, and things exist that the rest of the world has forgotten how to have. We went looking for the Indonesia that exists when you go further than Bali. Not the Instagram Indonesia, not the package tour Indonesia, the one that takes more time and more discomfort and more willingness to see things that challenge everything you consider normal. That Indonesia is unlike anything we had seen before, and unlike anything we expect you have seen either. Tana Toraja, the dead who live at home. When someone dies in Tana Toraja, they don't immediately leave the family. The body is brought into the house and laid in the main room, given food and cigarettes, spoken to, and treated as ill rather than dead. The Torajan term for a recently deceased person is to makula, a sick person, not a corpse. In Torajan belief, death isn't a single moment but a process, a gradual passage from the world of the living to the world of the ancestors, one that can only be completed with the proper ceremony. And the ceremony, the Rambu Solo, is expensive. A full Torajan funeral can cost the equivalent of tens of thousands of dollars. And for a high-status family, far more, hundreds of thousands. Buffalo are sacrificed, the rare spotted ones worth a small fortune. Pigs are slaughtered, and guests are fed for days, sometimes weeks. Most families can't manage that straight away. So the body waits. To keep it through the long interval, it's preserved, traditionally with herbs, now usually with formalin. And it stays in the family home for weeks, months, in some cases years. The family lives their daily life around it, sleeping and eating in the same house, speaking to the deceased as they would to an unwell relative, asking how they are, telling them the family news, keeping them in the conversation. They aren't gone yet, the thinking goes. They're sick. Only once the family has saved enough and the ceremony can finally be held does the person complete the passage to Puya, the land of souls, to become an ancestor watching over the family they left. In much of the West, death is handled quickly. The body removed, the funeral scheduled, the grief expected to move through its stages on something like a timetable. In Tana Toraja, the body stays home, and the grief keeps no schedule. The dead remain part of the family until the family is ready to let them go, which might be years. Since this is about death and mourning, take it gently if it touches something close to home. Jakarta, the capital that is sinking. Jakarta is sinking, not as a metaphor and not in some distant future, but now, visibly, with the worst affected areas dropping by around 25 centimeters a year. This is the capital of the world's fourth most populous country, home to more than 10 million people in the city itself and around 30 million across the greater metropolitan area. The cause is fairly clear. Jakarta sits on a coastal plain of soft clay and sediment, and more than half the city has no reliable piped water, so people draw it from underground instead, sinking thousands of wells into the aquifers. As that water is pumped out, the ground above it compresses and subsides. The result is that roughly 40% of Jakarta now lies below sea level. In the north, where the sinking is worst, even the seawalls built to hold back the Java Sea have dropped below the height they were built to reach, because the ground beneath them is sinking too. When the monsoon arrives each year, the mix of heavy rain and high tides overwhelms the defenses in the worst-hit neighborhoods. There, the flooding isn't really a disaster anymore. It's a season. People have built their lives around it. Furniture raised, ground floors abandoned during flood months, motorcycles parked up on platforms. It's expected and it's managed, but it isn't solved. In 2019, the Indonesian government announced that Jakarta would no longer be the capital. The replacement, a purpose-built city called Nusantara, is being raised from scratch in the forests of Borneo at an estimated cost of around $33 to $35 billion, with full completion not expected until the 2040s. The move has drawn heavy criticism over the rainforest being cleared and the indigenous communities displaced for it. Jakarta itself will remain the country's economic center and biggest city, still sinking by around 25 centimeters a year in the worst places, and in some spots more. Komodo Island, the last dragons. The Komodo dragon isn't fast. A healthy person can outrun one over flat, open ground. For a long time, that fed a particular legend, that the dragon only needs to bite you once, then follows you for days while you slowly die of infection from the filthy bacteria in its mouth. That story turns out to be mostly wrong. Research over the past couple of decades has shown that a Komodo dragon's mouth is no dirtier than any other carnivore's. The animals actually clean their teeth carefully after feeding. What the dragon really has is venom, glands that deliver anticoagulants and blood pressure-lowering toxins. Combined with a slashing bite from sharp, recurved teeth, this makes prey bleed heavily and go into shock. And successful hunts of deer or boar are usually over in minutes, not days. The old image of an animal dying slowly of sepsis seems to come from misread cases of water buffalo, which aren't native to these islands, escaping a bite and then standing in filthy waterholes until their wounds turn septic. That's a failed hunt, not the dragon's plan. The dragons live in Komodo National Park, a cluster of islands in the Lesser Sunda chain of Indonesia, and essentially nowhere else. Wild populations exist only on Komodo, Rinca, Flores, Gili Motang, and Nusa Kodi. There are roughly 3,000 of them. They're thought to be a relic of much larger lizards that once ranged across Australasia, now hemmed onto a few dry islands. and they've been here for millions of years, long before anyone arrived to name the place. The biggest reach around 3 meters and 70 kilograms or more, with powerful legs and a heavy, muscular tail that can knock a grown adult off their feet. Attacks on people are rare. The park has recorded only a few dozen bites and a handful of deaths over decades. But they do happen, in 2009 and 2017 among them, because this isn't a zoo animal, but an apex predator. Park rangers escort every visitor, carrying forked wooden staffs to fend the dragons off if they have to. The staff mostly reassures the tourist. The dragon moves at whatever pace it chooses. Papua, the Stone Age that wasn't Myth. In 1938, an American zoologist named Richard Archbold was flying a seaplane over the central highlands of what's now the Indonesian province of Papua, studying high-altitude vegetation, when he spotted something unexpected below. A large valley, the Baliem, with clearly cultivated fields laid out across it. In it lived tens of thousands of people. By later counts, around 100,000 across the valley as a whole, farming, organized into villages, with trade, ceremony, and ritual warfare, and with no idea the outside world existed. The outside world, for its part, had no record of them either. The Dani of the Grand Valley had been living more or less on their own terms for a very long time. The highlands of New Guinea hold some of the oldest agriculture anywhere on Earth, going back roughly 10,000 years. And while the valley wasn't completely sealed off, Dutch parties had met outlying Dani and their neighbors in the early 1920s. The Grand Valley itself stayed unknown to outsiders until Archbold flew over it. The Dani had developed their own stone and bone tools, their own rituals, and their own customs, including ikipalin, in which a woman would have part of a finger removed as an expression of grief when a close relative died. The men wore the koteka, a gourd penis sheath, and little else. Their wars with neighboring tribes followed rules, fought in set places, broken off at sundown, and were as much ceremony as combat. When missionaries in the Indonesian state arrived from the 1950s, they changed what they could. Finger cutting is now rare, and a 1970s campaign even tried, without much success, to replace the koteka with shorts. In the more traditional villages, the koteka is still worn, and Christianity sits alongside older beliefs rather than fully replacing them. Today, Papua's capital, Jayapura, is a modern city with malls, internet, and a university. Yet Wamena and the valley beyond it are reached mostly by air. And not far from there are villages where men still wear the koteka, and the old ceremonies carry on much as they have for a very long time. Both worlds exist in the same province, in the same country, at the same moment. Borneo fires. The lungs that are burning. The fires are visible from space, not a few of them, but most of them. Every year during the dry season across Borneo and Sumatra, hundreds of thousands of fires are set deliberately. By plantation companies, by smallholders, by land speculators, by anyone who wants to clear forest and can't afford to do it any other way. Burning is essentially free, and clearing forest by hand takes years. what the fires mostly produce is smoke. And a great deal of it, because much of the burning is on coastal peatland, which smolders at low temperatures for weeks or months. That smoke doesn't stay put. It blankets Sumatra and drifts across to Singapore, Malaysia, southern Thailand, and beyond. In 2015, a year made worse by El Niño, the haze hung over Southeast Asia for months. In Palangkaraya, in central Borneo, the air turned yellow and pollution readings ran many times past the hazardous line for weeks on end. Estimating the death toll is genuinely difficult, and the studies disagree. Figures for premature deaths across the region from the 2015 haze range from on the order of 10,000 up to around 100,000 in the most cited Harvard-Columbia study. Whatever the exact number, these were deaths from smoke. Smoke from fires lit to clear land for palm oil, pulp and paper, the kind of products that turn up in food, cosmetics, and packaging on shelves in wealthy countries. Clearing land by burning has been illegal in Indonesia since 1999. But enforcement is patchy, and the companies that profit from the cleared land often have ties to the officials meant to enforce the law. So the fires return with nearly every dry season, as they have since the 1980s, and the haze comes back with them. And whatever the toll in a given year, it falls on different people each time. Bali, the dark side of paradise. The picture most people carry of Bali is a rice terrace. Green, layered, a worker in a conical hat, morning mist. The part that rarely makes the frame is the rest of it. The traffic, for one. The stretch of road between Kuta and Seminyak that can take 45 minutes to cover a few kilometers, because around 6 million international tourists arrive each year. Closer to 16 million once domestic visitors are counted. On an island of about 4.4 million people, where the roads were never built for those numbers. And the plastic. Bali's beaches are covered in it, not occasionally or only after storms, but routinely. And especially in the monsoon season, when ocean currents and the island's own rivers wash waves of trash onto the sand. At dawn, hotel staff rake it off the popular beaches. By afternoon, it's piling up again. Then there's the price of land. Plots a family could once have built on themselves have been bought up by villa developers at prices locals can't match, pushing families out toward the edges while the villa charges visitors hundreds of dollars a night. And the temples. The sacred sites of Balinese Hinduism, one of the most distinctive religious traditions anywhere, have become backdrops for photographs, with tourists posing in rented sarongs in front of offerings left for the gods rather than the camera. The Balinese, on the whole, aren't visibly angry about it. They're patient and famously gracious hosts, skilled at the kind of hospitality that makes visitors feel welcome without revealing what the host really thinks. But the people who were born here before the villas, the 6 million arrivals, the traffic and the plastic, remember a different island and are watching it change in ways no one really asked them about. Toraja funerals, where buffalo cost more than cars. A Torajan funeral lasts 3 days, sometimes 7, and for the wealthiest, as long as a week and a half. Across those days, there are performances, music, processions, and hundreds of guests who have to be fed every day. And there are the buffalo, At a Torajan funeral, water buffalo are sacrificed, and the number tracks the status of the dead. For a commoner, it might be 2 or 3. For a nobleman, dozens. For the highest rank, sometimes more than 100. An ordinary water buffalo in Tana Toraja costs somewhere between about $2,000 and $10,000, depending on size and quality. And the most prized animals, the pale spotted buffalo with pink skin and blue eyes, can go for $25,000 or more apiece. At the grandest funerals, the buffalo alone can run past $500,000. Families save for years to manage it, take out loans, and accept contributions from relatives, who are then understood to be owed the same in return at the next family funeral. It's effectively a funeral economy, circulating money through extended family networks across generations. The reasoning behind the spending is spiritual. Torajans hold that the quality of the funeral shapes the standing of the deceased in the afterlife, and that a poor send-off leaves the soul in a lesser place. So families spend beyond their means to give the dead what they're believed to need. The sacrificed animals aren't wasted. The meat is shared out among the guests, and the scale of that distribution is itself a display of the family's wealth and generosity. In that sense, a Torajan funeral is as much an economic and social event as a religious one. A redistribution of wealth through the community, carried out by way of death. This passage deals with death and ritual sacrifice. I've kept to the documented practice. Mentawai, the tribe that wears its identity on its skin. For the Mentawai, tattoos aren't decoration or fashion. They're identity, and they begin early in life. Each pattern on the body says something specific. Status, spiritual connection, a person's role in the community. Read together, the tattoos amount to a kind of biography, lineage, achievements, and a relationship with the spirit world, all written on the skin. The Mentawai live on the islands off the western coast of Sumatra, chiefly Siberut, Sipora, and North and South Pagai. They've been largely separate from the rest of Indonesia for a very long time, and that distance preserved a culture unlike any other in the archipelago. The tattoos, called titi, are among the oldest tattooing traditions in the world, applied with a sharpened stick and ink made from sugarcane and soot. It's painful and slow work, done in sessions spread across years. Traditionally, women also had their teeth filed to points, something considered a mark of beauty. The clothing is minimal. A loincloth with flowers and leaves worn in the hair and on the body, along with beads and carved objects that signal the wearer's bond with the spirits of the forest. Because for the Mentawai, the forest isn't a resource so much as a community. The trees, the animals, even the rocks are understood to have spirits, and people live inside a spirit world held to be as real and present as the physical one. The Sikarai, the shaman healer, is the one who deals with that world, curing illness by negotiating with the spirits behind it, and performing the ceremonies that keep the community in balance with the forces around it. Indonesia has repeatedly tried to fold the Mentawai into mainstream society, and some communities have taken on more contact while others have resisted. In the most remote villages, the titi tattoos are still made, teeth are still filed, and the Sikarai still practice. A very old way of life that, in those places, is still keeping its distance. Borobudur, the temple that was lost for 1,000 years. For centuries, almost nobody knew it was there. The jungle had grown over it, trees rooted in the stones, vines covering the carved reliefs, volcanic ash from repeated eruptions burying the base. Beneath all of it lay 2,672 relief panels, 504 Buddha statues, and 72 latticed stupas. The largest Buddhist temple ever built, hidden in plain landscape. This is Borobudur, in central Java, Indonesia, built roughly between 750 and 850 AD under the Sailendra dynasty, at the height of Buddhist civilization on the island. Over the following centuries, it was abandoned. Exactly why isn't certain. But the eruptions of nearby Mount Merapi, a shift of power to eastern Java, and the later decline of Buddhism as Islam spread all seem to have played a part. Whatever the mix of reasons, the forest and the ash slowly took it back. In 1814, Thomas Stamford Raffles, then the British administrator of Java, heard reports of a large monument in the jungle near Yogyakarta and sent an engineer to look into it. The engineer found Borobudur, and clearing it took years, stripping away the jungle, excavating the buried lower levels, and working out what had actually been uncovered. The reliefs running around the base and terraces tell stories in carved sequence. Buddhist teachings, the life of the Buddha, the Jataka tales, meant to be read by walking around the temple in a set direction. And the building as a whole is laid out as a kind of map of the universe, as 9th century Javanese Buddhists understood it. You begin at the bottom, in the realm of desire. The middle terraces are the realm of form, the upper terraces the formless realm, and the great stupa at the summit stands for nirvana. It had sat lost for centuries until a British administrator happened to ask the right question in the right village. Raja Ampat, the richest sea on earth. The number marine biologists reach for with Raja Ampat is 75%. Roughly 3/4 of all known coral species on Earth are found in this one archipelago, off the western tip of New Guinea, in the Bird's Head seascape of West Papua, Indonesia. The figures behind it are staggering. On the order of 1,500 fish species, 537 corals, nearly 700 mollusks. In water clear enough to see 30 meters or more. It's widely regarded as the most biodiverse marine area ever surveyed. One site, Cape Cry, holds the record for the most fish species counted on a single dive. Some of the fish here were first described as species from Raja Ampat itself, because they'd never been documented anywhere else. And a single reef can hold more variety than vast stretches of other oceans. The Indonesian government built a network of marine protected areas here starting in 2007. No industrial fishing, no anchoring on the coral. And the reefs have stayed intact in ways that reefs in much of the world haven't. The mass bleaching events that have hit large parts of the Great Barrier Reef have generally been milder here, in part because cold upwellings from the deep help moderate the water temperature. But the threat hasn't gone away. Warming oceans will catch up eventually, and the upwellings can't buffer that forever. And Raja Ampat's very reputation now brings boats, and boats bring tourists who touch the coral. and waste and anchor lines that can shear off coral when dropped carelessly. A reef that came through relatively intact for a very long time is now the most popular dive destination in Indonesia, which is exactly the thing that could either fund its protection or hasten its decline. For now, both of those are happening at once. Kelimutu, the lakes that change color. There are 3 lakes at the summit of Mount Kelimutu, a volcano on the island of Flores in East Nusa Tenggara, Indonesia, and each one is a different color. The colors don't stay fixed either. Over months and years they shift. A lake that was turquoise turns green, then brown, then red, then black. Another that was brown turns blue. The third moves between reds and chocolate and a murky green. Scientists have studied Kelimutu for decades. The colors come from chemistry, dissolved minerals in the water reacting with volcanic gases seeping up through the lake floor. So that when the balance of those gases shifts, the color shifts with it. That's the scientific account. The Leo people who have lived near Kelimutu for generations tell it differently. For them, the lakes are where the souls of the dead go, sorted by who they were in life. Tiwu Atambupu, the lake of the old souls, takes the elderly and the wise. Tiwu Nuwa Muriku Fai, the lake of young men's and maidens' souls, takes the young. And Tiwu Atapolo, the bewitched lake, takes those who did wrong. When the lakes change color, the Leo read it as movement among the dead, the shifting of these different communities of souls. Elders still watch the lakes, still interpret the changes, and still offer guidance based on what they see. The scientific explanation and the spiritual one have sat side by side for as long as people have lived here, and neither has pushed the other out. 3 lakes on a mountain, changing color for reasons science can account for but not quite predict, and that the Leo have been reading for centuries. Banyuwangi, the village of witches. In Banyuwangi, a city at the eastern tip of Java, there's an area that's come to be branded Kampung Penyihir, the witches' village. The name isn't ironic so much as descriptive. Practitioners of Ilmu Hitam, black magic in Banyuwangi, don't necessarily hide what they do. They're known in their communities, and clients come to them fairly openly. For love spells, for protection, for revenge. Indonesia is the world's most populous Muslim-majority country, and Islam has been practiced across Java for roughly 600 years. But alongside it, in Java and Bali, and across the archipelago, older animist traditions that long predate Islam have carried on. The figure at the center of this is the Dukun, the traditional healer and ritual specialist who can treat illness with herbs and ceremony, guard against malign spirits, and, depending on who you ask, cast curses or lift them. In Banyuwangi, the practice is tied to the Osing, the region's indigenous Javanese, who held on to pre-Islamic traditions as much of Java converted. Ubud Rice Terraces, the UNESCO site that Instagram is killing. The Subak system has kept Bali's rice terraces watered for around 1,000 years, and possibly longer. It isn't just irrigation, though. It's a social institution, a cooperative in which the farmers sharing a watershed manage the water together, making decisions by consensus and distributing it according to need, tradition, and the rhythm of the rice cycle. What's striking is that it's coordinated not by engineers, but by religion. Water temples, the Pura Subak, set at different points down the watershed, schedule the flow of water through cycles of ritual that line up with the growing season. And it works. Modern irrigation science has studied the system and largely confirmed that this traditional, ritually timed water management controls pests and keeps the soil fertile in ways chemical-heavy farming struggles to match. In 2012, UNESCO recognized the Subak landscape as a World Heritage Site, the terraces of Jatiluwi among them. And it's now in trouble, not from neglect, but, in a way, from success. Bali's tourism economy has made the land far more valuable under a hotel than under rice. And young Balinese are leaving farming for tourism work. The terraces take a lot of labor to maintain, and that labor isn't being replaced because a young person can earn more driving tourists out to photograph the terraces than working them. The same terraces that fill countless photographs every year are kept up by farmers whose children mostly don't want to keep them up. In that sense, the picture of the terrace is quietly helping to undo the terrace itself. Dayak, the headhunters of Borneo. The skulls are still in the houses, old human skulls hung in nets from the rafters of longhouses in the interior of Borneo. The families who live in those houses can often tell you whose skulls they are and who those people were when they were alive. The Dayak, a collective name for the indigenous peoples of Borneo, practiced headhunting for centuries. Taking a head wasn't random violence, but a ritual act with specific meaning. A head was thought to carry the spiritual power of the person it belonged to, and to take one was to add that power to the strength of the community. The skulls kept in the longhouse were protective, guarding the community, their power accumulating as more were added. Colonial authorities, Dutch and British, suppressed the practice in the 19th and early 20th centuries, reduced it, rather than ending it cleanly. And by the early 1900s, it was widely thought to have died out. But it resurfaced in the ethnic conflicts that followed. In early 2001, during the Sampit conflict in central Kalimantan, a wave of violence between Dayaks and Madurese transmigrants that killed several hundred people and drove more than 100,000 from the province. Beheadings occurred that consciously echoed the old practice. It was documented and photographed in 2001. The skulls hanging in the old longhouses are themselves old. The practice they came from is not recent. But the longhouses are still there, the skulls still in them, and families still live alongside the remains of people their ancestors killed for spiritual protection. A practice that ended, and didn't entirely end, deep in the forest of an island larger than France, the third largest in the world. Since this passage deals with real ethnic violence and killing, I've kept to the documented record rather than dwelling on its details. Nusantara, the capital nobody has moved to yet. The decision was made in 2019. Jakarta, the existing capital, was too crowded, too polluted, too congested, and sinking. So Indonesia would build a new capital from scratch in the forest of East Kalimantan on Borneo. It would be called Nusantara, an old Javanese word meaning archipelago, and it would house the presidential palace, the parliament, the Supreme Court, and the ministries, laid out by a winning design as a kind of forest city, with the government core at the center. Construction began in 2022, with the whole project costed over the long term at something like $33 billion. By 2024, a cluster of buildings was finished, most prominently the State Palace, set on a ridge above the jungle, with a roof shaped like the Garuda, the national eagle. In August 2024, the outgoing president, Joko Widodo, held an Independence Day ceremony there. But the city around it wasn't ready. Residential areas, commercial districts, and much of the infrastructure were still incomplete. And the planned inauguration of Nusantara as the capital didn't actually happen. Then the momentum slipped. When Prabowo Subianto took office in late 2024, Nusantara stopped being his predecessor's flagship priority. Funding was cut sharply. The public works budget for the project fell from around 111 trillion rupiah to under 30 trillion in 2025. And the plan was scaled back. Prabowo recast Nusantara as Indonesia's political capital, to be functional by 2028, rather than a full replacement for Jakarta anytime soon. Indonesia's constitutional court confirmed that legally, Jakarta stays the capital until a president formally signs the move over. The repeatedly delayed relocation of civil servants is now meant to begin in earnest, with a few thousand officials slated to move in 2026, and the vice president expected to start working from a newly finished palace there. And the city isn't empty. Counting the existing villages folded into its boundaries, along with officials and construction workers, around 147,000 people were recorded living in the Nusantara area by late 2025. What it isn't yet is a working capital, a half-built administrative center in the Borneo forest, its long-term future still uncertain, built to replace a capital that is still slowly sinking into the sea. Mount Merapi, the volcano with 1 million neighbors. Mount Merapi has erupted dozens of times since the 1500s, and it's the most active volcano in Indonesia, which is itself the country with the most active volcanoes on Earth. In 1930, an eruption destroyed more than a dozen villages and killed somewhere around 1,300 people. In 1994, another killed dozens. In 2006, the threat was serious enough to evacuate thousands. And in 2010 came the largest eruption in well over a century. Around 386 people died, many in pyroclastic flows, and more than 350,000 were evacuated. Merapi stands less than 30 kilometers north of Yogyakarta, a city of nearly 400,000, and on the volcano's own slopes, hundreds of thousands of people live within striking distance of the summit. They were told to leave in 2010. Some did. Many came back. The reasons aren't irrational. The volcanic soil around Merapi is among the most fertile in Indonesia, and the slopes have supported rice and vegetable farming for generations. To leave Merapi is to leave land that has fed the family for longer than anyone can remember. There's a spiritual bond too. Many Javanese regard Merapi as sacred and inhabited by a guardian spirit, Eyang Merapi, sometimes glimpsed, in local belief, as a figure called Mbah Petruk in the shapes of the ash clouds, who must be respected and appeased. That relationship runs through the figure of the Juru Kunci, the keeper of the key, the spiritual gatekeeper appointed by the Sultan of Yogyakarta to mediate with the mountain. The most famous was Mbah Marijan, appointed in 1982. When the 2010 eruption came, he refused to leave his home a few kilometers below the summit, not on instructions from a spirit, but out of his sense of duty as the mountain's guardian. And he died there, found in a praying position. His son took on the role afterward, though he leans more on volcanology than mysticism, and once handed out two-way radios to the farming families on the slopes. The volcano hasn't stopped erupting, and the people haven't stopped living on its slopes. The arrangement holds until the next eruption big enough to break it. This passage involves real deaths and disasters. I've kept to the documented record. Mount Bromo, the Sea of Sand. The Tengger caldera is about 10 kilometers across, and inside it lies a flat expanse of gray volcanic ash and sand. The Sea of Sand, Lautan Pasir. Rising out of it are several volcanic cones, among them Mount Bromo, which is still active and still smoking every day. To reach Bromo, you cross the Sea of Sand, on foot, on horseback, or by jeep when the sand is firm enough. It's fine gray ash, laid down by eruptions over thousands of years, and it gives the caldera floor a bare, lunar look. At the center are the horses. Local Tengeris offer rides across the sand to tourists who'd rather not walk the couple of kilometers from the parking area to the crater. The horses move through the haze the mountain constantly breathes out. Past the Hindu temple the Tengeris have kept at the foot of the crater for centuries, up to the rim. From there, you look down into the active crater a few hundred feet below, with smoke rising out of it. The Tengeris, a Javanese community who still practice a form of Hinduism descended from the Majapahit era, hold Bromo sacred. Each year, during the Yajna Kasada festival, they climb to the rim and throw offerings into the crater. Fruit, vegetables, livestock, money, given to the mountain in keeping with an old legend. And below the rim, other people wait, many of them poorer locals, who try to catch the offerings with nets and long poles before they fall too far. Because an offering caught on the way down is still a chicken, still a sack of vegetables, still money. It's a mountain that people throw food into and other people wait beneath to catch. And it's still quietly smoking every day. Prambanan, the Hindu temple next to Borobudur. In the 9th century, on the island of Java, two of the greatest religious monuments ever built went up within about 30 miles of each other. One was Borobudur, the largest Buddhist temple in the world, raised by the Sailendra dynasty. The other was Prambanan, a complex of 240 Hindu temples, built by the Sanjaya line. Two faiths, two kingdoms, building at the same time in the same region of the same island, both roughly between 750 and 850 AD, and both among the largest religious structures anywhere on Earth at the time. The central temple at Prambanan Candi Shiva rises about 47 meters, the tallest classical Hindu temple in Indonesia, and is dedicated to the three great gods, Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma, each with a towering temple of his own. Around those main shrines stand hundreds of smaller temples, 224 of them, laid out in concentric rows, a whole landscape of stone spires. Then, around the 10th century, both sites were abandoned, as the center of power on Java shifted east and the region's volcanoes stirred. The forest grew over them for centuries. Prambanan was documented again in 1811, during the brief period of British rule on Java, and slow reconstruction has continued ever since. And in 2006 came another blow. A magnitude 6.3 earthquake struck near Yogyakarta, killing well over 5,000 people in the area and damaging hundreds of Prambanan's smaller temples. Some of them are still in pieces today, their original stones scattered by the quake and stacked beside the foundations, waiting to be fitted back together. A 9th century temple knocked down in 2006, still being slowly rebuilt. This passage mentions a disaster with significant loss of life. I've kept to the documented facts. Banda Islands, the islands that cost New York. In 1667, the Dutch and the English signed the Treaty of Breda, ending their Second War. Under it, England gave up its claim to Run, a tiny island in the Banda Archipelago in what's now the Indonesian province of Maluku. While keeping an island it had seized from the Dutch a few years earlier, in 1664. That island had been called New Amsterdam. You know it as Manhattan. To the Dutch, this looked like a sound trade, because Run grew nutmeg, and in the 17th century, nutmeg was one of the most valuable commodities on Earth, at times worth more by weight than gold. The Banda Islands were then the only place in the world where the nutmeg tree grew, which meant that whoever controlled Banda controlled the entire global supply. And nutmeg in 17th century Europe wasn't a seasoning for eggnog. It was treated as medicine, widely believed to ward off the plague. And during outbreaks, people paid fortunes for it in the hope it would save them. The Dutch East India Company, the VOC, wanted that monopoly completely, and the way it secured it was monstrous. The Bandanese population before the conquest is generally estimated at around 13,000 to 15,000. In 1621, under Governor General John Peter Zoon Cohen, the VOC stormed the islands. Some 40 of the Bandanese leaders were beheaded by hired Japanese mercenaries, and through massacre, forced deportation, enslavement, starvation, and flight, the native population was all but destroyed. By most readings, only about 1,000 Bandanese survived in the islands. Those who remained were enslaved on the very nutmeg groves their people had owned, which the Dutch carved up among their own planters and worked with imported slave labor. The monopoly held for nearly 2 centuries. Then, around 1810, as Britain took the islands during the Napoleonic Wars, nutmeg seedlings were carried off to British colonies in places like Penang, Ceylon, and Grenada. The monopoly broke, the price collapsed, and Banda stopped being the most important few square miles in global trade. Today, the islands are quiet and remote, home to some 20,000 people, and better known now for their diving than their history. The nutmeg trees still grow there. Since this passage describes a colonial genocide, I've kept to the documented record rather than dramatizing the violence. Tumpak Sewu, the waterfall curtain. The name means 1,000 waterfalls, and from below you can see why. It isn't one fall or two, but a broad, semicircular cliff with water pouring off it along almost its entire length at once, forming a wide curtain of white that drops something like 120 meters into the gorge below. This is Tumpak Sewu in Lumajang Regency in East Java, set at the foot of Mount Semeru, an active volcano that regularly puffs out ash and steam, and that has also produced far more dangerous eruptions in recent years. The water feeding the falls comes down off Semeru's slopes. Volcanic water from a volcanic mountain over a volcanic cliff. There's no road to the base. To reach it, you walk on a trail that drops steeply into the gorge, with ropes fixed to the rock at the steepest sections. Without them, the descent would be hard to manage. At the bottom, you're down inside the gorge itself, its walls rising green and wet on both sides from the mist the falls throw up. And ahead is the curtain, its full width in view, the separate streams merging and parting as they fall. The cliff isn't vertical everywhere. In places, it recedes into caves and overhangs, and you can walk into the space behind the water. The sound back there is total. For a moment, nothing else really exists. Around the main fall, smaller waterfalls feed into the same river, which eventually carries all of it to the sea. Most visitors to Java head for Borobudur, for Bromo, for Yogyakarta. Tumpak Sewu, with its roped trail, its gorge, and its wide curtain of water, is far less known than any of them, though those who find it rarely forget it. Indonesia keeps surprising you, no matter how much you think you've already seen. We saw people who keep their dead at home, talking to them, feeding them, keeping them in the family for months or years, until they can afford to let them go. We saw the largest living lizards on Earth, the Komodo dragons, whose venomous bite does the work while they wait. We saw a metropolis of some 30 million, sinking by as much as 25 centimeters a year in its worst districts. And a forest where a multi-billion-dollar capital is being raised for a government that has barely begun to move in. We saw people who have tattooed their whole bodies for generations, and a valley whose inhabitants were unknown to the outside world until 1938. We saw what may be the richest reef on the planet. And the fires set every dry season to clear land for products that end up in kitchens far away. We saw a temple lost for centuries, and another still being pieced back together after a 2006 earthquake. We saw a volcano that smokes and stirs almost constantly, with hundreds of thousands of people farming its slopes who won't leave. We saw a wide curtain of a waterfall that hardly anyone has heard of. We saw the islands that once led the Dutch to keep a nutmeg source and hand Manhattan to the English. We saw rice terraces, kept up for around 1,000 years, now slipping away because farmers' children earn more driving tourists to photograph them than working them. We saw old longhouses still hung with the skulls of a headhunting past, and lakes that change color for reasons science can describe but not quite predict. And we saw places where the gods are treated as entirely real, and the offerings left for them were never meant for the cameras. Indonesia isn't one thing. It's around 17,000 islands, some 270 million people, and more than 700 languages inside a single border. Enough that you could spend a lifetime here and still not see all of it. And we've only started.